Hey guys, Jim here. Welcome in once again. Today we're going to be talking about a seriously hyped up knife. I'm very late to the game, and I'll explain to you why a little bit later. We've been looking at the Spartan Blades Harsey folder. In particular, this happens to be the Plague Doctor. Now, I'm not really going to go much into the defining characteristics of the knife or the founders of the company, because honestly there are a zillion videos. This is one of the most reviewed knives on YouTube. We'll touch on a few of those things, but I'm not going to go greatly in depth because so many other great people really have. You go back to the origins of Spartan Blades. It was a couple of guys, retired special forces, that said, hey, let's take our knowledge and our skill set and build up a business. They were going to go into the gun business. And they realized, oh shit, that's a lot harder than it seems. And a lot of regulatory red tape and hoops to jump through, and it just may not be worth it. Their secondary focus was knives. They said, hey, we can do this. Start up a knife company. Now, generally, that does not sound all that great. It doesn't sound like I'm going to get a great knife at a guys that just went, it's a business we can make money at, and, you know, we can figure it out along the way. The difference is they went to Chris Reeve, sat down with Chris Reeve, visited Chris Reeve, and learned not only the knife-making portion of the business, but probably even almost as important, or just about as important, is the business of the knife-making business. So I'm not going to, again, not going to go into a lot of details on that. They went to a solid source that was intelligent, knowledgeable, had gone from making custom knives to then retiring as one of the greatest production knife makers on the planet. Chris Reeve really is the dream of most knife makers. To get to that level, very few people ever will. You know, it's Chris Reeve, it's Rick Hinderer, it's Mick Strider, now Greg Bedford, the explosion, the growth that he's gone through. Again, whether you like him or his knives or not, you can't deny the explosion of growth and the size of his facility and employees and so on and so forth. So to get to that level, it's very, very difficult to achieve. So they went to the right guy. They learned the basics, they learned what they needed to do, then they did what they wanted to do. One of the smartest things I think they did was to team up with William Harsey. Bill Harsey is an absolute legend. Again, another one I really don't need to go into because you either know who he is and the knives that he's designed, specifically fixed blades, or you don't and you've been living in a cave. In that case, do your research. But by partnering up, collaborating with Bill Harsey to create a couple of their models really helped to put them on the map, because until that point, honestly, I take it or leave it, I wasn't particularly too excited by many of the designs that Spartan was offering. It really wasn't anything particularly special about any of them. I'm not saying they were bad, they just didn't, you know, tickle my butthole. When it comes to this particular model, it's still, you look at it and go, that's a pretty nice knife. If you look at it without the engravings, without the anodization on the titanium, you go, that's a pretty nice knife. But it's still not giving you that tingle. It doesn't, you know, pull all the wrinkles out of your sack. It's just a really nice knife. In a sea, in a world, in an industry of really nice knives. Then you look at the packaging. You go, okay, kind of standard box. A lot of artwork and printing on it. Really doesn't make me feel like I'm getting anything special. Feels like I'm buying a zero tolerance. Those of us that are buying hand-ground, handmade knives, we're buying semi-production, mid-tex, customs. This is not what we're looking for here. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a basic box, but there's so much artwork on it. it really just screams production. Like you just bought a production knife for a lot of money. And that's fine. It's what's inside the box that counts, right? We take that box, either we throw it away or we stick it in a Rubbermaid bin that sits in a closet, and we only see the packaging again when we trade or sell the knife. What matters is the knife itself. Now, I'm going to say this. It's a fucking great knife. But one thing I despise is hype for hype's sake. If you haven't heard about the Spartan-Harsey folders, you've been living under a rock. Everybody who's anybody just goes on and on and on and on and on about this knife. And that still wasn't enough to make me buy one. I went, again, it's a good looking knife, but it's not too far different from so many other knives in my collection. I don't really need it. And then honestly, it was this particular model, the Plague Doctor, that sung to me. And the reason being, a lot of us had a very interesting year in 2020 because of the pandemic. For some folks, it was good. For a lot of folks, it was bad. And there were just a lot of things that went down, a lot of lifestyle changes. The world around us changed. And I wanted to commemorate that. And this was a really, really awesome way to commemorate that. I love the artwork. They really did a great job on this. And I wanted to go back to having something that was just a really solid EDC, an everyday carry. Now, what we're going to discuss a lot here is the differences between a really great knife and a really great EDC knife. And there are differences between those two things. You can have a really great knife in, let's say, a dyer ware. Damn thing weighs a half a pound. It's overbuilt, 1/4 inch thick steel. It's a great knife. It's built very well, designed nicely, awesome materials. It's a great knife. It is not, however, a great EDC knife. Even if it's a great EDC knife for you, because you don't mind carrying a bigger, thicker, heavier knife, doesn't bother you, to be a true EDC knife, it's got to satisfy that large population that's out there to purchase it. And what that generally means is a sizable, useful blade, quality materials, somewhat easy to carry, meaning either in its size or in its weight. This thing is damn near 6 ounces. That's heavy as shit. To give you some comparisons, some really great EDC knives, you look at a Chris Reeve Sebenza, and a lot of people really, and justifiably, will call this a cross between a Sebenza and a Hinderer XM18. And I absolutely see it, because you've got kind of a Sebenza sort of overall aesthetic, although there's no particular design point that looks like a Sebenza, but it will remind you of a Sebenza. And then you do that and you go, oh, that must be a Hinderer. The thickness of the titanium, the jimping in the titanium and in the blade, the standoffs, the way they're designed, even though they are different, it reminds you of a Hinderer. But it doesn't, it's not exactly like either one of them. It really is its own knife. But if we compare it to other knives that I look at as really great EDCs, you saw my video on the VBR. Significantly lighter than this knife. Very useful blade shape. Jerry Moen's Mongoose. While it's not going to be a hard use knife because it is a somewhat smaller, thinner blade and it is ground thinner, still a great EDC knife. It's a good, useful size, nice blade shape. This weighs half of what this does. Then if you want to go size for size, the Riot K2. This weighs significantly less than the Spartan-Harsey. And they are almost identical in their sizes. But I don't want to do a one-to-one comparison with any of those because that's not fair to any of them. I'm just saying, for an EDC knife, you generally want it to be a little bit lighter weight. Why they aren't milling pockets on the inside of the titanium is truly beyond me. This is a knife that I feel if they were to cut an ounce out of it, I think so many more people would buy this knife. Now let's get into talking about buying the knife. In the basic plain stonewash, no graphics, no artwork, $460. Already, you're more expensive than a Sebenza. Sebenza is easier to carry. Every bit as useful, almost the same size blade, but a little bit cheaper. If you want this in plain, no artwork, black DLC, you're looking at $495. You get into these engraved special editions where they do 4 to 5 different editions every year, then they're done, they're gone, so the value goes up. They start at about $525 and go up to about $650. I paid $650 for this. I got it from another member in a knife group, actually in the Spartan knife group on Facebook. Got it brand spanking new. Because I've been chasing this for a year. I've been wanting to get this exact knife for a year. So I didn't mind spending that much. But then when you spend that much on a production knife, you really second guess yourself. You really look that knife over. And I love the features. I love the placement of the thumb stud. It's perfect for shooting it out. Great flickability. Aiding in that is this scallop right here. It's done on both sides, so if you're a lefty. So it's wonderful for that. Great ease of use. The glass breaker, which I've never seen anybody point out in any videos, but that's what this is. That is a glass breaker. The jimping, I could take it or leave it. That's great, sure, it's nice. Very solid lockup. Thick titanium. Fairly thick blade. A lot of people are calling this an overbuilt knife. This is not an overbuilt knife, folks. It's just not. It's more overbuilt than, you know, something like this, which is borders on being a gentleman's knife. But it's 154 thousandths of an inch thick. It's got a nice distal taper because of the top swedge, so it gets thinner, but yet it's still got a pronounced tip that is supported. I'm only pissed that I paid all this money and some jackhole at some point apparently had a fucking sticker on the blade. So I've tried a few different things to clean that off and get that out of there, but the shadow remains. And that sucks for a knife that you spent so much money on, but I did buy this to be an EDC, so I'm not being that particular about it. But when you spend that much money, you really do start breaking it down. You go, okay, S45 VN steel. Awesome. It hasn't really proven itself yet, but it is a step up from S35 VN. It's a really good steel. Basic stonewash, not all that exciting. We're all kind of tired of it by now. I would have loved to have seen even, I'm not saying a whole hand-rubbed satin blade, but even if the flats were done in a nice clean satin, it would have been really nice for the money. Grind's pretty good. Plunges are mostly even. Again, doesn't bother me. A couple things that do bother me. That lock bar cutout. Holy shit! That Evergreen boat could have turned around easier in this than in the Suez Canal. I could park a fucking Miata in there. There's no reason for that lock bar cutout to be so large. I'm glad there's a Hinderer style lock bar stabilizer built in, because that not only prevents you from over travel, overextending the lock bar as you unlock it, but it prevents the lateral movement as well. And this, with that much of a gap, I'd have to worry about that. I'd have to wonder at least about that. But it's kind of unsightly. I just don't want to see that big of a gap. There's no need for it. You know, just comparing it to the knives I have sitting out here in front of me, even though this is a bolster lock, you still see the lock bar cut out. That's a huge difference. And for a precision company, and my good God, the money they've got to be making, why they don't have a wire EDM, that could be, we're so thin you could put a whisker in there. So I don't really get that. I don't understand that. Other part I don't get is right here. The end of the lock, you catch it, you feel it every time you touch the knife. And it's sharp, very, very sharp. And it always grabs skin if you're touching anywhere near there. That should be changed. And the pocket clip, for the money, at this price, is inexcusable. When there are knives out there for $250 with sculpted titanium clips, there's no reason for a cheap spring clip, none. No, I like the arrow they have in there. I like the usefulness of it because you can actually grab the knife easily out of the pocket. Your skin will fall in there and grab it. I get all that, but it's still a cheap bent spring clip. There's just, for this price, $650, should have a nice sculpted clip that goes along with the rest of the knife. It's also really hardware intensive. Oh my God. So you've got proud hardware all the way around that you feel. I would love that to have been countersunk. But you got 1, 2, 3 body screws. You have an exposed blade stop. Again, that's going to be a personal preference. Some people don't care. Again, $650, not a fan. An enormous pivot, which I'm okay with on this knife because they used it as part of the theme. So it looks fantastic. But on the regular versions where there's no engraving on it, I kind of think it just, visually it's overkill. And one thing I hate, and you have to do it as a production company, so I'm not knocking Spartan for doing this. As a production company, again, you're selling to the masses. There are so many people out there that are lefties, or actually so few people out there that are lefties, but man, they are vocal. So to be able to switch the clip over to the other side, it makes it unsightly. They do have a nice filler tab. I like the fact that they engrave it, make it look nice, but it's still very disruptive in the design flow. Chris Reeve doesn't do that. Chris Reeve will make X amount as lefties, and they always sell. Me, if I were the business owner, that's what I would choose to do as well. I would make, 85% of my inventory standard, 15% in lefties, and not have to do this ambidextrous stuff where I'm disrupting my design flow. I really don't like filler tabs. I don't like reversible clips, but that's a personal thing. That may not bother you. Now that the nitpicking is over with, as you can tell, my knife is not broken in yet. Still takes a good bit of effort to get it to flip open, but I know that will break it and change. I've seen plenty that the knives damn near drop shut on their own. They're nice and smooth. It feels great. The quality is absolutely there. I wish I could thumb it open like a Sebenza, but the way they make their detent, you can't. Their detent is made to be flicked or almost like it's a flipper. It doesn't really appreciate slow opening because you're really having to overcome a very strong detent, and in the process, you're almost being forced to push on the lock bar, which increases detent strength. So even when my finger's off the lock bar completely, you're really having to push at it to get past it. So for me, I find it's just easier to flick it and get it done and over with. Plus also, I ran the bandsaw through my thumb the other day too, so it's still a little bit sensitive. Here's the way I look at it. I hate things that are overhyped, that are hyped for no reason. I'm happy to say that when I got this, it was absolutely worth the hype to me. I feel that it lives up to its reputation. The quality in the build is there. The quality in the materials is there. The artwork is beautifully done. I love the contrasting colors. I love the gold. Really looks good when the light hits the little gold areas. And the brim of the hat and the staff looks really, really, really sharp. Now, speaking of really sharp, how sharp is it? Well, it's kind of fat behind the edge, to be honest with you. It's got a nice edge on it, but it's a very, very, there's a lot of material behind the edge. And I don't know what their thinking is on that, if they really expect somebody to be doing some hardcore chopping with it. They don't want to have a delicate edge like a Sebenza. But for an EDC knife, I personally like something a little bit slicier. Again, that's going to be personal preference. The design is fantastic. The build quality is fantastic. That little niggle right there that I had, that takes away a little bit, but that's really it. I mean, everything else about the knife is built extraordinarily well. It feels good in the hand, although it feels a bit big. You put a 3.5-inch XM18, now that's not even really fair, XM24 in your hand, you put a Sebenza in your hand. The XM24 is a bigger knife. It's meant to feel bigger. It's not meant to be as streamlined as this. But the Sebenza, put this against a large Sebenza, Sebenza just feels a little bit better. Feels a little bit sleeker. It feels a little bit more, I don't even want to say that it feels more high-end, but there's something about it. Especially in the action. When you swing that blade open, it's so smooth. The detent is perfected for that knife. The blade will never fly out on its own. Shake the living hell out of a Sebenza, you'll never get the blade to fly open. But you're not having to overcome a really strong detent in order to open it up. I think if this were a flipper, that'd be the perfect detent. But it's not. It's a manual thumb stud opener. The detent should be different. Should be set a little bit different. Now, is it worth $650? You know, the jury's still kind of out on that. For me, to have something special, I had in my own mind that I wanted to commemorate 2020. And this was a really great way to do it. So for me, it was worth it. For your average Joe, if they're looking at this versus a Sebenza, they could get a Damascus Sebenza for this price. And they do make Damascus versions of this knife. I'm not going to comment on that because I have not handled one personally. I've only seen images. And I have a very strong opinion off the images I've seen about their Damascus. And they're using Chad Nichols Damascus, which I work with a lot. I love Chad Nichols Damascus. I have my own opinions on their etching and their finishing on that, but it may just be pictures. Who knows? I need to handle one for myself to really to make that any serious comments about it. This is more expensive than your typical Sebenza. It's heavier, it's thicker, may not be the perfect everyday carry for you in every single situation. But for somebody like me, it doesn't bother me. I like bigger knives. I like heavier knives. So for me, to have it just under 6 ounces, it doesn't really bother me all that much. I like the thickness of the scales. I like it being thicker than a Sebenza. It feels good in my hand. Somebody with smaller hands, it may not work out that well. So for me, can I justify $650? Absolutely. As I suggest it to you, I'm hesitant at the price point. Because it is a lot of money. You can buy a handmade, custom-made knife for $650. This is not. This is a production knife. A lot of people are going to have an issue with the way the plunges are done. Now, when you guys have seen when I make my knives, I do sweeping plunges, which means that the plunge lines gently sweep in from your thick blade stock gently down to your cutting edge. But generally, that's also going to radius this so you can visually tell that it's sweeping plunges. I'm kind of perplexed on how they're able to get almost a sharp corner with sweeping plunges. I'm not entirely certain how they're doing that unless they're backing up into the belt, and that's probably how they're getting that corner. But all of mine that sweep in, it has a very soft radius. Some people are going to have an issue because the edge starts here, not back here at the plunges. And when they go to resharpen it, they're going to hammer off a section here. They're going to cut it, they're basically going to make a notch. They're going to make a little square notch if they don't know how to resharpen it. That's the key. That's not a fault of the manufacturer or maker. That's the fact that you don't know how to sharpen a knife that doesn't have a sharpening notch. I don't care about sharpening choils. I do them on some of my models, and some of them I don't. Why don't I? Because aesthetically, that design that I made does not look as good with a sharpening notch. I offer lifetime free sharpening as long as I'm alive and making knives. So I'm not worried about your inexperience in resharpening knives. It's up to the maker. That knife can be sharpened and sharpened and sharpened and sharpened and look just as good without a sharpening notch. So I'm definitely not going to take off any points for that. And I've heard people talking about that before. It's not a design flaw, it's a design choice. I think today too many people are they're so obsessed with sharpening their knives. Oh my God, they'll buy a brand new knife and immediately throw it on a wicked edge. And it's like, no, you don't need to do that. In most cases, if your knife starts getting dull, strop it. Stropping it brings the edge back to life. It rehones that edge. And for most people, for most use, you could get by with stropping for probably a year before you ever need to take off material by sharpening. If you don't know how to sharpen, and you have a blade done like this, what's going to happen is you're going to be cutting up, and then the blade is going to start getting shorter and shorter and shorter while this remains the same. It's going to start looking like shit. So I get why some people say, oh, I've got to have a sharpening notch. It needs to have a sharpening notch. For your skill set, you need a sharpening notch. For a professional sharpener or a knife maker, they don't. We know how to sharpen them properly. So please don't knock this knife for having the sweeping plunges and not having a sharpening notch. There's just no need for it. So overall, to me, I think it is worth it. It's a nicely balanced knife, albeit a bit heavy. It's got all the features that I want. It's got great materials. I love the artwork. The artwork is what sold me. At this point now, I want to get the golden compass, where the whole knife is black and it has the golden compass. Some of the artwork doesn't agree with me. I don't feel the Northwestern theme. I'm not from the Northwest. So while that's it's got the little frogs and everything on it, very cool. And for people from that region, it means something to them. That's great. They've got different designs that speak to different people. The new Warthog that just came out, it's only in the 325 right now. It's not in the bigger one, but I think that's pretty damn cool too. The artwork sold it for me. If it weren't for the Plague Doctor theme, I would not have owned this knife. I would have looked at it and went, that's a nice design. Spartan-Harsey designs really great functional knives. And that's what they are. They are function over everything else. They fit your hand properly. They're not going to move around in your hand. The blades are shaped properly to get the maximum amount of use out of them. Thumb ramps and jimping in all the right places. Everything is designed the way a proper knife should be designed for use. Not for display, not for looking pretty, but for actual use. That's great. Spartan's doing a great job in the quality, in the quality control department. They look great, they feel great, again, except for that one little thing that really should be addressed. Everything's done right. It's a well-balanced knife, both visually and in the way it feels in the hand. So I say, this is a knife that at some point you probably should own. I will always tell people, you need to own a Sebenza. I'm not going to say everybody needs to own a Spartan-Harsey folder. I'm going to say you probably should, because you need that spare money. And for it to be a special knife, you're probably going to want one with the artwork. So you're going to spend $525, $550, $600, $650. So you're going to have to invest quite a bit of money. But if you're ready to do that and the design sings to you, you're going to love it. Will it be as special as a handmade full custom knife that you could have obtained at the same price? No. But it still may be a standout in your collection because of the artwork, because of the special anodizing, because of the laser, excuse me, because of the laser etching. They've done something special. They've taken a basic utilitarian knife and they've made somebody, even as jaded as me, go, fuck, I need that. I really need that. I have to have that Plague Doctor. I really, really, really need that. And I was beating my head against the wall for nearly a year trying to get one of these. And you know what? I feel damn fortunate that I was able to get one of these. It's a really good knife. Mr. Harsey should be very proud to have his name on there. It's also very photogenic. So hey, when I'm carrying it, and it's addictive to carry, I carry it a lot, I'm happy to take a quick picture and throw it up on Instagram. It's a very photogenic knife. When I pull it out of the pocket and show a buddy, they're like, holy crap, that's really cool. Look at that artwork. It's got a wow factor. It's got a cool factor. It's got a dude factor to it. It's not just a plain Jane utilitarian knife. It's not just titanium and steel and a basic finish. It's got a little bit of character. Actually, it has a lot of character. And at some point, that justifies the price you pay all by itself. The knife having character. And this knife has character in spades. Absolutely love it. Love the COVID virus on the backside. Love how they've taken it and put it around the pivot. I love this pivot. Again, because of the Biohazard logo. The engravings, the motto, the way it's done. It's the banners. Everything's just really, really nice. And even a filler tab that I typically hate. You know what? They did a damn good job with it. So nothing's perfect. You could pick anything apart. I have nothing serious to complain about with this knife. Just that one little thing. Well, I think I'm going to end up making a clip for this because the knife is just so awesome. And that does kind of bother me. For the price, it does. It does, and I'm sorry I can't get past it. The spring clip does bother me. Man, this thing's already breaking in just from playing with it on video. I can feel a little bit of a difference. Getting a little bit quicker, getting a little bit smoother, and I love that. So there it is, guys. There's my personal thoughts on the Spartan-Harsey folder, the Plague Doctor. Gorgeous, gorgeous knife. A little heavy, maybe a little bit thick, but a little bit heavy for some people to actually EDC. Not for me. I think it's great. It's got everything I want in a knife, and it's got a great wow factor. It's going to hold its value because right now, every time they make a special edition and they stop making it, the prices go up because there is demand, because they are good knives. It's not a falsely inflated market. They're making a good quality knife that people want, and then when they do something special as far as artwork, people want that particular one more. I get it. So, yeah, it's one of those few times that I can say the hype is real. God, I hate hype. But, yeah. I don't think it's the end-all, be-all some people have claimed it to be, but it's right up there, man. It's really friggin' close. So if you haven't had a chance to get one in your hands, you haven't had a chance to see one in real life, and you're wondering, I only see it online. If I pull the trigger, it's going to take a lot of money out of my bank account, and I won't know how I feel about it till I get it. Trust me, you will be happy. Take that chance. If you find somebody trading one or selling one or you find them on a dealer's website while they're in rotation and they're shipping, just buy it. I can't imagine anybody buying this knife and being disappointed. So there's my long-winded video. Did not expect it to go this long. I'm going to cut it out here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you on the next video.